Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. My name is Mel and I'm really excited to paint with you today. Have we painted together before? If we have, I'm super glad that you're back. If we've not painted together before, I'm really glad that you're here to paint with me. And I'm glad that you're trusting me to get you through this process. I'm going to break this painting down into bite-sized steps. I've taught over 1,500 paintings at a major paint and sip studio, and now I'm painting in my basement with you. So let's get down to it. We're going to paint Spring Aspens today. And for that, I've got two brushes. I'm going to use this 1/2-inch flat brush and the smaller 1/4-inch flat brush. The idea is that you just want a larger brush and a smaller brush. We're going to use the big brush for the background and the trunk of the trees. And then we'll use this small brush to get our lines in and our little leaves. Super simple, easy, use what you've got. I've got a cup of water. Use cool water. Hot water will melt the glue that holds your brushes together. That's no fun. And I've got my handy dandy little reusable plastic palette here. If you want one, you can buy it on my website. But I've got some black paint. I've got 2 puddles of white. I'm a messy painter and I want 1 puddle to mix and dip with and another one for the clean white on my trees. I've got some red, some metallic gold, and some metallic copper. So get yourself all set up. Oh, one more thing, dirty rag. I have an old washcloth that I just use to clean and dry my paintbrushes with. That way I can use it over and over again. So grab a drink, get yourself comfortable, put on your favorite podcast or some music, and let's get down to it. Let's paint. All right, so we are going to get started. We're going to start with our background, and we're going to start here low in the sky, just above the horizon, and work our way up. Now, a lot of what you see here low in the sky gets added in a subsequent layer. So don't expect that this lowest part of your sky is going to look just like this now. We've got to sort of build it up. Okay, so I've got my 1/2-inch brush. I like to drag the bristles right along the edge of my cup to just get off any big excess water. And I can always blot it on my paper towel. Now, let's figure out where this needs to be because you may be using a different size canvas than I am. So what I want to do is choose the bottom third for my land. So you can see there's about a third, another third, and a top third. So just roughly, it doesn't have to be approximate, but if you're type A and you need to get out a ruler, I am not going to judge you. I may suggest you have another drink, but just relax. It doesn't have to be approximate. We can guess. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of gold. And when I load my brush, I really try to do it from the edge of the puddle in case it's dirty. And I'm going to find my bottom third point here and start just on an edge. And I'm not going to make a straight horizon line because I want a little bit of hill here. So I start off with a little bit of curve, dip down, and bring another little hill in. And baby, everybody's hills are different. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So don't worry if yours doesn't look like your besties that you're painting with. We're not going to compare. All right. So now I'm using this wide edge of the brush. So you can see my brush. I've got that skinny side up and down. And then as I sweep, I get to use that wider edge of the brush. And what I want is for the paint to just glide. I want to use enough paint that it just, oh, my heater just came on. I hope you can hear me. Just so that it glides across the canvas. What you don't want is to hear a lot of scratching. And you're gonna see your brush strokes because metallic paint is super translucent. So don't worry about that. We're coming up just about an inch or a couple of fingers in height. And if you're getting a lot of what I like to call break marks, where you come through and you lift your brush up, I don't know if you can see it, it leaves that little mark. What you wanna do is just sweep from edge to edge, all the way across in one smooth motion. And that will make sure that it eliminates those lines. Okay, so I don't want to do anything else here. If you've got any excess paint, just go ahead and scrape it off on the edge. I'm not going to clean my brush though. I'm going to paint dirty. So I'm coming over to my dipping white. Remember, I have 2 puddles, one that I'm going to use to dip and mix with, and one that I'll save and keep clean for my trees. So I've got my white. And you can see I'm coming in above that gold and I'm following that smooth ridge of the hills, those curves. And as I start to get into that gold, you can see I'm just sweeping back and forth. And these can be short and choppy for now. We'll smooth them out in a minute. But I just want to start working a little bit of that gold up into that white. We can come back and get a little more gold if you want it. We just want that golden luster to be working its way up from that horizon really lightly. But of course, this is your painting. So if you want more bling bling, baby, do you. Do you. Paintings are not supposed to be the same. They can look alike, they can be inspired by the same sort of idea, but they're never going to be exactly the same. All right, I'm just working my way through. Brought a little bit of that white down into that gold, because what I'm looking for are different levels of light. What I want to see is some darker gold, some brighter, whiter spots. I don't want everything to be exactly the same. I want just different subtle levels of light in there. And I don't want to play with this too much. I'm just gonna leave it about there. And I guess this is a really good time for us to talk about one specific thing. I'm going to paint a lot faster than you. I am a professional. That's what I do. And what I want you to do is take your time. If you need to hit the pause button and catch up, please do. I don't want you to get stressed out worrying about keeping up with me. Just hit the pause button and then you can pop back in when you're ready to move along. Okay, so I've got my gold with a little bit of white there. And now I'm going to grab a little more white. I didn't clean my brush, but there's really not much gold left in it. It's mostly white. And again, I'm just wisping back and forth, letting my strokes cross over one another. And the whole idea is to just start bringing this white up. We want to be about halfway between our horizon point and the top of our canvas. We want this section we're working on to come up about halfway. Now what we're doing here is laying down what I call a buffer zone. We're going to start bringing in some pink and working our way up, but I don't want the pink to go directly into that gold. I want there to be a little bit of an ombre or a fade. So that's why we applied that extra white, because it'll help. It's sort of like a shock absorber. It'll absorb some of that pink for us and help us kind of control the way that blends and flows. Okay, I'm about ready. The one thing you want to know is with acrylic paint, when you're blending, you do need to work faster than your paint dries. So I know I did tell you that you can pause whenever you want and come back, and that still stands. But keep in mind, when you're working on a section where we're blending, you have to go until your blending is done, because once paint dries, it won't blend, it will layer. Okay, so my white is on, and what I want to do is make a little bit of this really light pale pink. It looks a little bit like Pepto-Bismol, or if you're a fan of Steel Magnolias, you can call it Blush or Bashful, entirely up to you. But I'm going to take a scoop of white, about the size of an almond there. And then I'm going to, without cleaning my brush, you can see I'm just taking the very corners of those bristles. I'm going to add my color to the white, the red, like I'm adding spice to a dish. I'm going to start off slowly and work my way up. So I want a pale pink. I can always make it darker. It's harder to make lighter. Now, if you're mixing on a paper surface, you're going to find that your plate's going to absorb a little bit of that paint. So one good trick is to use a piece of wax paper. I should have told you that earlier. Okay. Now you can see there, let's see, can you see? You see how there's swirls in it? Leave those swirls. That's the magic that Bob Ross tells you it's going to happen when you paint. It'll create different layers of light for us. So I'm just going to sort of twist my brush there, pushing it. That'll help get off any excess. And I'm starting by adding my pink to the canvas above my white. And that way I can start to sweep down, and that will help me control how far it goes. And, you know, just basically the way that it fades. Because I don't want stripes. What I don't want is for this to look like the side of a box of our rainbow sherbet that you just opened up with all those layers. I want the idea and those tones, but I don't want even layers. So I'm bringing some pink down in the middle, leaving a little more of this white. But you can do it however you like it. If you really are enjoying that pink and you want it to come down everywhere, let it. It's your world. Isn't that what Bob Ross told us? It's our painting, our world. Now, remember those break marks and streaks that we talked about earlier? We're going to see those here. But that's okay, because as we work up into this color, it sort of gives the impression of wind or movement, and that's going to work in our favor. Give something nice and sort of airy for our aspen trees to sit up against there. All right, still working. And you can see, remember what I told you, we don't want even layers. So I'm letting the edges become a little bit uneven. When I see a fun, bright or dark streak and it makes me happy, I leave it because those are happy accidents. That's the good stuff. There we go. Just trying to make little bits that are a little darker or a little lighter. So now my middle third of my sky is filled up with that pink. And what I want to do is add just a little bit more pink to what's left. Or excuse me, a little more red to make a darker pink. You can see that's getting darker. And again, just above the section I worked on, I'm sweeping, dropping off that paint. And just when you're ready to reload your brush, you hear that scratchy sound, start wisping and working your way down. Now that's a little dry. I don't want to add more paint, so I just kiss the very tip of my bristles to the top of my water. Maybe I will get a little more paint. But again, leave those streaks if you like them, a few uneven edges and layers. Let it come down a little darker in some spots. Sometimes I feel like there's enough paint on the canvas, but it's not moving. So I just give it a little scrub. Just sort of work that paint down into the grooves and then swish and sweep, swish and sweep. All right, see how this is working? We're getting from that gold to that pale pink, which I just think is a little pale. So even though I'm going to go back and fuss with it a little bit, you can. It's your painting. You spent your money on it. You're spending your time on it. Make it the way you want it. Okay. There we go. Trying to use a really light wisp to sort of get rid of any really garish brush strokes there. Okay. Remember, if you need to pause, just make sure the layer you're connecting to isn't drying before you get there. All right. So we've got this deeper pink and we're going to go a little bit deeper. Add some more red. And then, just for fun, because I'm a little funky, I'm going to grab a little copper, just about the size of a pea. Can you see that? Can you see it gets a little shimmery? And I'm going to start right up here, just like before, above the section I was just working on. Try to make it just a scotch darker. We want our darkest and deepest colors up at the top. That's going to build the height and dimension of our sky. And then I'm going to work my way down. Just working my way down. Giving little scrubs where I need to help spread some of that paint around. Just swish, 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 swish. Okay. And now I'm here where I meet. But because this color is much darker than this one, what I want to do is use a clean brush to get that blend together. So once you get there, just give your brush a gentle little sweep on the bottom of your cup. Sweep it around. You don't have to smash it. That's going to mess up your bristles. Just give it a sweep and it'll get clean. All right, then I'm just going to pat it, give a little sweep to my paper towel because I want a little moisture in these bristles. It's going to help pull this paint around. Now this clean brush, I can get right in there and give little scrubs And the dark paint's going to come down into my lighter paint. And then I can just give that swish and sweep. Swish and sweep. Zip, zip. Just like that. Now, you can overwork this. At this point, I think I'm going to call it good for that sky. You work on yours, but remember, if you keep adding paint, it's not going to get any darker or deeper. What you want to do is let it dry, and you can always repeat this process. So, like if I were doing this as a commission or something I'd sell, I wouldn't just do one layer. I would do two. So feel free to go back in and do that. Uh-oh, look at that. I got a little feisty there, didn't I? It's all right. Just pick up a little white, sweep that through, and call it a happy accident. Thank you, Bob Ross. All right, so I'm going to leave it alone. Well, wait, I need a little bit of light up here, just a tiny bit, because I feel like that section's a little full and just a little boring. And those little white wisps, they're going to look like clouds. That's why I use that angle on my stroke. Okay. All right, leave it alone, Melissa, leave it alone. Hardest part of painting is knowing when to stop. So while this is drying, we're going to come down here and work on our land. So get your sky in, don't overwork it. Everything will blend together and become one color. If you want it to be a little deeper and more lustrous, let it dry and add a second layer. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to start working on the ground. So when you're ready, come back and join me. I'll be here. Okay, we're back and ready to start working on our ground. Now I'm just going to clean my brush, start off with a fresh brush, still using the big one. So little bounce and wiggle, drag those bristles across the edge, squeegee out any excess water, a little press into my towel. So I'm going to grab a little bit of copper. I'm just going to move it over to one of these empty spots here. I've got, I don't know, it's about a pea size, maybe 2 peas. And then I'm going to take the tiniest bit of black and start working that in. Just swirling it around. And let me show you what that looks like up in the camera. Can you see that? How it's right here. It just sort of gets really like a really shiny, lustery brown. And I like to leave the streaks in it because, again, that's going to give me a little help with my dimension. So I'm going to start. First thing I want to do is just get a fairly clean edge here. You might need a little water. Our paint's pretty thick. You want it to be creamy, like heavy cream, not pudding, but not so thin that it's like milk. And I'm just going to start wisping through. I'm going to give a fairly clean edge here to my horizon line at the top of my hills. And just start working my way down. And I want to get this whole thing covered with this base color. Pretty much going to use it all up here. Give a little scribble to move that paint around because I know that there's plenty there. Just want to even it out. Pretend your brush is your beauty blender. Dab, dab, dab. Okay. And then I'm just going to start sweeping. What I want to do is bring one of these hills down sort of in front of the other. So this hill on the right is going to be in the back. So I'm going to grab just a tiny bit of black and let it blend in with that edge just a little. Maybe just a little bit of copper. What I want here is just to sort of create little messes of color. Little messes of color. It doesn't all have to be even. But there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I want it a little bit darker down at the bottom. So I'm just picking up tiny specks of black and blending that in. And I'm pretty happy with this right side. I'm not going to mess with it too much more. But now what I want to do is add a little bit of light to separate one hill from the other. So I'm going to grab some copper by itself and come along the edge of this lump for my hill and down off the page. Don't paint your wall. All right. And then I'm just going to start streaking. And the color is making some difference, but the largest difference that my eyes see is going to be the brush strokes, because they're going to create those streaks and those little hits of light. So you want to keep it loose and messy. Loose and messy is also forgetting in painting. Pretty good, right? We can add a little bit of black closer here, maybe on these edges, just add a little bit of dark. Again, the whole idea is just to create different shades. Once this dries, we'll come back in and add some gold here, because that will really help. We're also going to add some gold and copper to our sky, so it looks like that sun's just coming up over that horizon. But at this point, we need to let it dry. So this is a really good time for a drinking break, bathroom break. Go do whatever it is you got to do. I'll be here when you get back. I'm not going anywhere. I am going to hit this with my heat gun. You can use a blow dryer. I just like to use my heat gun because, you know, it's kind of badass. It's a power tool. And get this nice and dry. And once it's dry, we'll come in and we'll start adding our metallic highlights to our sky. We'll add these bushes and trees that are going to be in our background far away. And then we'll add this little bit of metallic highlight to our hills. So take your time, take it easy, get yourself a drink, and I'll see you back here in just a few minutes. All right. All right. Look at my heat gun. Pretty badass, right? I also have a blow dryer. I just really like using this. One thing you want to be careful of when you're drying is if you get too close, you'll see that paint sizzle a little bit. Just pull back. But right now, I'm dry. You can see I can move my hand around the canvas. Nothing is making a mess. So I'm good to go. Let me put my heat gun away. Okay. So next order of business, we're going to come in and add some highlights to our hills and to our sky. So I've got my big brush, getting it nice and clean. And this time I'm sweeping it to dry it off on my paper towel. I don't want a lot of water. And what I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of gold, tiny bit, all by itself. And starting right here in the dip, in that center, I'm just sweeping. And if I'm using tiny bits of paint and I sweep enough, these little bits are just going to start to fan out. And if they're not, you can use just a tiny dip in the water very carefully and sort of help spread that out. As that paint thins out, it starts to create different levels of luster here. And I'm only going to go as high as the pink. I might go just up into the pink here to create a little bit of wisp, but that's about it. That's all I need, just that tiny little hit. Without cleaning my brush, grabbing just a little bit of copper there, very tiny bit, very tiny bit. And here in the dip, I am barely creating a semicircle. I'm not really painting the sun, but I want my light or this brightness to be coming up from there. So once I've got that half circle, I'm going to mess it up and just scrub away those edges. That's why I'm only using a little paint. This is called a dry brush technique. You can probably hear the scratching. And what that does is it uses the dryness of your bristles to just sort of spread a little bit of that around. Oops, I got a little heavy-handed, so bring a little more gold in. And when that happens, you got to know when to stop messing with it. Leave it alone, Melissa, leave it alone. Okay. Good enough. I've got that depth coming up right there, just a little. Okay. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And that's all I need in that sky, just enough to bring that light up. So now I want to add a little to my hills. Now these hills are further away, so I'm going to use some copper there, just a little bit. And I'm just making a few little swishy streaks here. Just a little hit. Hit it and quit it, people. Don't come back. Just little hints to just create little bit of light on that hill. Now here, where my second hill comes in from the left, sweep off my brush, grab a little bit of gold, and I'm just dropping off little bits of gold as I come down that hill. And I'm not going to pick up any more, but I am just wisping back and forth, creating little bits of lightness and letting things sort of fade out to darkness as they come down toward the front. And I feel like it could be a little bit darker, so I'm taking a little of that black and copper from earlier and just bringing up a little bit of darkness to provide just a little bit of balance. That make a little more sense. Give it some depth. Okay. You mess around with it too long, you go wrong, that's for sure. So, ta-da! I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to come in and work on my background trees and add these little bushes. And then, of course, if I need to add any more little bright hits of light, I can always do that. Now, I'm putting these in so that you can see how bold and crazy they look right now. Once I add those trees, they soften up and put everything back in the distance. Okay, you ready? All right, if you're not, pause. I'll be here. But I'm going to put in these skinny little guys in the background. And for that, we're busting out the baby brush. Now, what I want to do is thin down some black paint. Our paint's the consistency of pudding. I want this to be the consistency of ink. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water and add some drops of water here to one of these little holes. You can see there's just a little thing of water there. And take a tiny bit of black paint and work it in until it becomes really thin and inky. Really thin. Now that's pretty dark, so I'm going to add just a touch of white to soften it just a little bit, just tiny touch. I want a really dark, almost black gray. Okay. Now, dab your brush off on your towel because you don't want big drops or drips. They'll run down your canvas, then your mascara will run down your face, and nobody needs that mishigas. We're supposed to be relaxing. Okay. Little tiny bit, dab it off. And what I want to do is just add a couple of trees over here to the left and over to the right. So I'm using that skinny edge of my brush and just pulling up a line and creating a Y. Just a little Y. Now, I'm going to start at the tip, and as I come down on that branch, I'm pushing a little bit more, and my bristles are spreading and getting a little bit wider. And this should look very faint and washed out because it's in the distance. So really we're just seeing its shape or its form. Let's see, we can bring up another little guy here. And see how my line skipped there? Don't care. Again, it's in the background, in the distance, maybe just one more little branch. Like that guy broke or something in a winter storm. Who knows what his story is? But when you're working on trees, this is super important. You always want V's. You never want an L. You never want a branch coming off in a complete L. There should always be an angle. And again, these are sort of our hit it and quit it trees in the background. We're not going to mess with them too much. We just want them there to give us a little bit of depth and distance. So they look like they're far off in that background. Now, if your forest is a little more crowded, that's okay. Do what you want to do. But I'm going to leave that there. That's it. If I mess around with it too much, it's going to detract from these beautiful aspens that are going to be in the front. All right, let's clean that off. Let's put in these little bits of bushes here. We're still going to use that small brush, but we're going to use some copper all by itself. And I'm going to use a technique called stippling. Let me show you here on the palette, where you just press and tap. Oh, Did you see that? I just spilled all that watery black paint. Thank God it went on my table and not the carpet. Don't tell anybody. Ah. Okay, little copper, and I'm just gonna go tap, 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 and create a messy little bush. Here we go. So right here above my horizon line, I'm gonna start a little bit lower so it looks like they're a little closer to us. And I am just tapping in a messy little bundle. It'll look like a bush. And it's not like a manicured bush. This is not a bonsai. Mr. Miyagi has not been caring for it. It's out in the woods. So we're just going to tap, and then I just sort of sweep that out to create a little bit of reflection, shadow. You can add a little gold to it if you want to get super fancy. A little bit of gold. Oh, it's sparkly. Yay. Okay. Little gold, little copper. Good to go there. Told you, super simple. But once we put these aspens in front of it, it's going to look like a bush. Okay. Here on that left side, same thing. But what I don't want is to make it symmetrical to the one on the right. So it can be a little smaller, it can be a little bigger, and have just a bit of a different shape. So copper's on, I'm gonna grab a little gold and just sort of tap. And wipe off that excess, I'm just sweeping some down there. And that's it, hit it, quit it, boom. So get yourselves to this point, and then you gotta dry it again, because we're gonna put in our trees next. And we don't want those going in over wet paint or they will not be dark. So I'm gonna bust out my heat gun, get your blow dryer, or let it sit for 20 minutes and, go read a magazine, do something indulgent, do a face mask, I don't know. All right, so I'll see you here in a few minutes. Okay, we are coming back and we're gonna start working on our aspen trees. So let's talk a little bit about this before we actually start painting. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't go to art school, but I know that odd numbers are better than even, because when we have even numbers, we go for symmetry. When we have odd numbers, one side has a little bit more, one side has a little bit less, and believe it or not, it creates balance in your composition. Our trees are going to be pretty much the same width at the top as they are on the bottom, and that's why I really like that 1/2-inch flat brush, because I can just go whoop and pull it all the way down. And they're going to take 2 layers. The first layer is going to look like caca. Do not freak out. Do not add more paint. Think of it like painting your nails. You got to put on one thin coat, let it dry completely, add the second one. So we are going to take our 1/2-inch brush, get it nice and clean, and I'm going to go into my clean white paint that I saved. And what I want to do is load it up. I want plenty of paint on here. I can always come back and get more, but I'm going to start with whatever is going to be in the background. So over here on the left, I'm going to do this tree first. Nothing is really dead center. They're all angling just a little bit. There's really no right or wrong way to do these. But I do like this X effect here and this little bit of balance. So I'm going to start, let's look at the top here. I'm just to the left of center at the top, and I'm coming down to this bottom left corner. So a little water might help your paint move a little more smoothly. Take a deep breath, take a sip, because you want to pull this all in one stroke. Even if you run out of paint, don't stop. Okay, here's the center, coming just to the left. I'm aiming for down here, and watch, I'm going to pull my arm. I am not going to move my wrist or my hand. You ready? 1, 2, 3. And I'm not going for a perfectly straight or even line. There we go. See, it's got a little bend or a curve in it. It's nature. That's how it happens. I'm going to go over it one more time. Now I'm choking way up on that bat. I've got a big grip there right on the metal part. The side of my hand is resting on my canvas, and I'm pulling my arm down, movements from my shoulder. And I think that's going to be good for our first base layer. I don't want to make it too thick because it won't dry. It'll get all gummy. That's pretty good. Let's add the second one. Ah, Now this guy's going to have to be in the back because I switched it up. It's okay. Happy accident. Don't worry about it. Yes, I'm a bozo, but I'm having fun, so who cares? Okay. Starting over closer to that right corner, and I'm coming down just a little bit. Here we go. One movement. There we go. Just going to clean that up. Careful. I'm using my pinky as a kickstand here because it can help me sort of make sure I don't put my arm in that paint. But you just want to watch where you set your pinky when you're doing that. Okay. Bring that down. Nice and easy. My edges are a little rough. Don't care. Don't care. Doesn't matter now. I promise you. All right. So I've got 2 here. Let's put some over. Let's start with these 2 on the right and then do this center cross one. So pick a spot and bring your brush down. Get a little bit more paint and just take one more pass at it. Not too thick. We just want to even it out a little. Sometimes just flip over your brush. There's paint on the other side of the bristles. Save yourself a trip to the palette. And these are really rough. If you had a close view, it's like not pretty. But again, that second layer and our definition detail that we put on, we'll fix it. All right, here we go. Tree number 4. There we go. Nice and easy. Breathe out on the stroke. Do not hold your breath. I used to work with a gal at the studio and she sounded like a yoga instructor. It was awesome. Now, breathe out, pull the stroke down. It was fabulous. She had everybody so relaxed. All right, we've got 4. Time for 5. If you need to, pause me. Take your time. If you're super type A and you want everything perfectly even and straight, this is not the right place for that. Trees bend. Aspen trees have little curves to them. It's very subtle, so try not to make them too straight. Start up here at the top on the right and work my way down toward the center. There we go. There we go. Now, the more you mess with these, the thicker they're going to get, which will make them a different kind of tree. We won't be able to make them thinner. So just let them go. Nice and easy. And because that layer's thin, it's going to dry fairly quickly for you. Just going to kind of leave that alone for a second. Hit it with my heat gun. Come back and we'll start the second layer. All right, we've got that first layer of white on our trees. And now we're going to add the second one. Still, 1/2-inch brush, some white paint. And remember how I mixed these up before? I can do this one first, which will allow me to make this one be in front. It's super easy to fix that. So I'm just starting at the top, and I'm going to go slow. I'm just pulling, lightly adding that second layer. It might still be just a touch translucent. That's okay if you need to. You can let it dry and add a third. But keep in mind when we add those little black details that are going to create that peeling bark that aspens and birches are known for, you're not going to notice it. You really won't. But believe me, I understand anxiety. So if it's worrying you, just make sure you add another little layer. We can always add the details when you are ready. All right, bringing this down. Ooh, look at that pull. That was very satisfying, wasn't it? Love when that happens. You get that paint just the right consistency and it just moves and glides. Yes. Okay. I'm a weirdo. But that's either why you're here or why you won't be back. Let's hope that's not the case. Okay. And I'm just getting that white in. Nice and easy. Smooth edges. Just little touches more where I think it's a little shadowy from those trees in the back. Okay. Just going to keep moving along. You move through your trees at your pace, and I'll do mine. Don't know why I'm singing all my instructions this morning. I'm in a good mood. Whoa, did you see that? Almost knocked my frame over. Okay, here we go. Oh, got a little lump there. Okay. Nice and easy. There we go. And again, still a little shadowy, still a little bit translucent. Don't care. It's not really going to matter in the end. Okay. Work on this one so that my final one will come across the rest. That'll make it look like it's in front and give me some depth and dimension. Try not to make them any fatter or thicker because I can't put them on a diet. They're going to be really hard to make thinner. So I just keep working my way slowly. All right, uno más. Here we go. Last one. Bringing that down. And at this point, by the time you get to this guy, you're going to be an expert. Just watch where you set your hand and let it glide. There's something very satisfying about that brush gliding just like that. Yes, excellent. Drop that brush. I'm done with that. Okay, so you know what's next. Let it dry. Hit it with the blow dryer, your heat gun. I'll be back in 1 minute. So we're going to start working on our branches and the details on our trees. And then we've got one more step after that, which is going to be the leaves. But I want to show you a secret weapon. If you are worried about making these fine lines down the edge of your tree, go grab a Sharpie. Try to make sure it has a little bit of a point. Don't pick the flattest one that your kids have destroyed. But you can always use a Sharpie. I'm going to show you how to use the Sharpie, and then I'm going to show you how to do it with the paintbrush. Watch me do it, decide which way you like best, and then pick your poison. But I'm just going to start over here on this edge. Make sure your paint's dry, because wet paint will ruin your Sharpie. But I'm just coming right along that edge, and I don't want a perfect line. It's okay if some of the tree comes outside of the line, but you can just pull that down, and it's going to create that effect. So even here, I'm a little bit inside of that white edge. Now I'm out of it. Just pulling down and creating that edge. Now, I'm going to do it with paint next, but I wanted to show you that trick because I really believe that creating art is supposed to be fun and relaxing. And if making a skinny little line with a paintbrush is going to get you all wigged out and cause you some agita, it's totally not worth the trouble. Go grab a Sharpie, or if you've got a black paint pen, you can use that. But I'm going to grab my small brush. And I still have just a little bit of my watered down black here after I spilled most of it. And I'm getting just a little bit on the tip of my bristles. And I'll do this guy next. Actually, I'm going to do the middle one because it crosses over and I want to make sure I get those lines first. So I'm coming down along the side, just like I did with the Sharpie. Same process, just a different tool. And if you're inside or outside of the line a little bit, do not worry. We're not creating photorealistic art here. This is expressionist. We're just expressing the mood or the way that sunrise felt that day. So nobody can tell you it's right or wrong. Let's pull this guy. I'm using that skinny edge of the brush there. Just that skinniest edge and the lightest touch. And if I skip a little or it gets a little jacked up, I'm not going to worry about it. I can use that section to make bark later. Little bumps will become a knot or a branch. No big deal. All right, see, I got a little thick there and a little thick there. Sometimes you can get it off with a little bit of clean water and a clean section of your paper towel. Just a little. You can kind of erase it a little bit. But be careful about doing that. You want to try to get these lines in one shot. Okay, here we go. The reason we want to do them in one shot is they turn out a little more organic and natural than if everything is overworked. Because then things become super straight. The perfectionist in you takes over. And you'll make yourself crazy. Trust the process. All right, 3 down, 2 to go. Look at that. That's all janky up there. Don't care. Okay, which one's in front? This guy's in front, the one that's furthest to the left. So I'm going to do that one first to make sure that I cross the right one over. Bring that line down. And that little bit of water in that black paint is why I can pull that line in one stroke. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. Just using a really light touch and letting it flow. All right. Oh, that guy really came on the inside there. All right, that one I'm going to fix. Let's find a clean spot on my rag. Yikes. So there we go. Just going to give it a little erase. Straighten that out. Bet you didn't know you could do that, huh? A lot of times we don't show you that in the studio because if we did, you'd never finish your paintings. So don't tell them I told you. Okay. Last little push here. Working my way down. All right. There we go. Now they're outlined. And that wasn't too painful. Shake it off. Shake it off. Let's put in some branches. Now we can see our branches come out. They're at the top part of the trees. They're really high up for the most part. They're a little thicker where they meet the base. You know how they make that little sort of knotty section? Still using that watered down inky black. And I'm going to start with whatever trees are furthest back first, using that skinny edge of the brush. And I'm just going to pull out a few branches here. And I lift and get light toward that end, just barely touching and lift that brush. Let it widen up just a little where it goes into the tree. Let some cross over. Remember, that's what's going to give us depth and dimension. And if you need to, you can use a Sharpie. I won't tell. No one's going to judge you. Round that off like it's stuck there. Stuck there where it came from. Whatever, same thing. All right, let's do another one. Just remember, make them a little thicker as they come in and meet your tree. So take your time. Don't hold your breath. Don't want you passing out on me. Let's put one here. Skinny, skinny, skinny edge. Lines break, that's okay. Come back, thicken it up just a little. Let's see. Keep moving my way through. Take your time. Put that little round piece there where it attaches, like a semicircle, a little curve. We'll use that in a minute to help create some bark. And I'm almost through here. I'm on my last tree. Okay. And that's really all I need. I don't want to fuss with it too much more because if I do, I'm just going to mess it up. So small brushes in the water, keep on going, use your small brush or your Sharpie, whatever you're using to get those branches in. And then we're gonna switch to our big brush and get it nice and clean and ready to go. We're gonna come in and work on the birch bark or the aspen bark that peels. And what we wanna do is just use the very tip of our bristles here, the very tip. So I'm gonna get just the tiniest, you can see there. See how I just have it on that very tip? And then what I'm gonna do is wipe most of it off on my palette. And let's start over here on the right. I'm just gonna put my brush along that edge line that I made and pull in with a little bit of a curve. Now, this needs to be fairly random. So, if you're super type A, it's time to take a drink. Some will come in a little further than others. Start off with a little bit. You can always come back in and add more. Our goal here isn't to make it look like a zebra. And that curve, if we pull, that little curve gives a little roundness and shape to our tree. There we go. There's one down. 4 more to go. And I paint like I'm writing or reading in Hebrew because I'm right-handed. So I work my way toward me instead of away. That way I'm not smearing all my paint. That got a little heavy there. Little heavy. Wipe off some of that excess paint. Just little bits. Hit that outside line and curve in every time I try to cheat. I really regret it. Give that little curve. You can see my bristles, or your bristles are probably starting to split a little bit, and that's going to help with that texture for you. Now this got a little crazy. I'm tempted to go in there with some white and sort of clean it up, but I'm going to resist that urge. And when I'm all done, if I still feel like I need to, I'll come back and take a look at it. But for now, just adding in my bark. Less is more. Even I have to fight the urge to get heavy-handed and overdo this. It's my kryptonite. I'm always wanting to add more. Little bits. Go easy. Try not to make an SOS message or pattern short, long, short. Just put that in and go. So take a look at, oh, I forgot this guy. How'd that happen? Let's go. One more. We are about, well, I'm about 12 inches from my surface. You're probably within 2 feet of your canvas. And if you've painted with me before, you know what I'm going to say. A little distance is good in painting. You got to stand up and step back. Because when you're super close to your canvas, it's like when you use the scary side of the mirror to tweeze your brow or your lip. Everything is frightening. So if you step back from your painting, your eyes will adjust. That distance will give you perspective, and you'll be able to better judge whether it's too much or too little, and be able to more easily identify what you might want to change about it. Sorry, I keep putting my back to you. I realize that's really rude. Still figuring out my setup in my new studio here. So if there are things that you like or that work for you, drop me some suggestions in the comments. I know that the lights are glaring off my glasses, but you know, I'm a painter and the learning curve on this stuff is pretty big. So I can completely empathize with what you're going through now. So I've got all my black in, and what I want to do is come up, and I am going to put a little white here. It's dry, so I can. I'm going to use that same trick that I did with the black with the white, but in reverse. And that's it. Don't want to touch it again. That just softened up that little spot there for me. All right, so finish up your bark. Don't go crazy. Less is more. Now we'll add some leaves. All right. So I'm going to switch to my small brush. And I'm going to use two colors for my leaves, copper and gold. I'm going to start with my copper. I've loaded it up. And to create my leaves, I'm just going to give a little push. And you can see my leaves are not really attached a lot to the branches. Some of them are. But they're really just gathered around. And we don't need a lot. Let a few fall if you want. I know spring is here, but maybe it was windy that day. So I'm adding the darker ones first, and then I'll come in. Just loose, you can have little clusters. What you don't want is to space them all perfectly evenly. You just want a smattering that goes through. That's it. Wipe it off. Grab some gold, because this is the piece de resistance. We are there. We are at the end. And we all survived. I'm sure I made a fool of myself, but hey, I do that all the time. Why should this be any different? Okay. So now I'm just coming in, adding those gold leaves. As few or as many as you like. There we go. These aren't leaves. I'm just adding a little bit of gold here because I feel like I need just a little bit of highlight. This is the end where you just sort of pick your details, right? Had some gold left on the brush, so I just added a little there. But there we go. Not bad. All right. So take your time with it. I hope you had a good time. Let it dry. If you want to come back and look at it in a day or two and work on some details, your paint will keep. Just put your palette in a plastic bag in the fridge, and you can go back and use it in several days. It'll be just fine. If you want to keep your brushes and use them again, I recommend you do if you got them from my kit. I just sort of sweep and bounce them on the bottom of my cup to help loosen up that excess paint. Dry them off. And when I dry them, I try to pull from the metal part, the ferrule of the brush, and pull up. And that'll help reshape my bristles. Keep them nice and tight. You can use brush cleaner, little Murphy's oil soap. Dry them. Squeeze out that excess water, and then just let them dry. You can use them forever and ever until a kid gets a hold of them. And I want to show you something. Remember, excuse me, at the beginning of our session, I talked about how little paint I want to use. Look at how much is actually still left in that palette. So use a plastic surface. You'll have way more paint. It won't be absorbed by the paper plate or whatever you're using. A piece of wax paper works great. Plastic lid from a Tupperware. They're all mismatched anyway. You're never going to find its mate. Use an old takeout lid. But this I can stick in a plastic bag, and these colors will remain good and viable for me to use for a few days. And if not, you can just rinse it out and give it a wash with some dish soap, and you're good to go. So I hope you had a good time. I hope you come back and paint with me again real soon. Please send me a photo of your painting because I really want to see it on social media so that we can all see what we're doing together. And now, my favorite part, are you ready? We're going to peel the paint off. So if you like those ASMR videos on TikTok, you're in luck. Here we go. Ah, look at that clean edge. Stunning. Boom. Oh, that one's hard to start. Get it. There we go. And gotta be careful because it's still a little wet. I should edit that out, but I'm going to leave it in just so that you know that this stuff happens to real people too. I just spilled my paint water everywhere. Thank God it was pretty clean. Drop my painting on the ground. But I will not be defeated. Here she is. What do you think? She's cute, huh? All right, you guys, I'm going to go clean up my mess. Finish your paintings, clean up your messes, and I'll see you back here next time. Okay, bye.